Welcome on in and gather around, gang. It's time for some more Total War 40k news. This time, Creative Assembly has released a developer roundtable, minus the roundtable, giving a little bit of insight as to the game vision. So let's dive right on in and learn a little bit more.
We've taken it so much further with this game.
There is war everywhere. You're not fighting on one planet, you're fighting on many planets.
Alright, we'll pause this every now and again. We're fighting on many planets, so it's not going to be what a lot of people were scared of with the galaxy map, where they were thinking it was going to be each planet counting as a settlement. These are going to be planets with different settlements, apparently, from what it sounds like, on them that we'll be waging wars on to try to have control of the entire planet. Likely it's not going to be an insane number of settlements, but I bet each planet will probably have, and they may tell us, but upwards of probably 3, 4, even 5 settlements each. I wouldn't be surprised if it's somewhere around that, or maybe even more, depending on the planet itself. I would not be surprised if maybe Hive World are going to have more than something like a Death World or something that is not as populated. But let's find out.
That's huge even for Total War scale.
Welcome to Total War Warhammer 40,000 Developer Roundtable. I'm Nastya, Senior Community Manager on Total War.
And I'm
Early on, cut as we've got had a surprise Amazon delivery, but let's get right back to it.
Josh, Head of Player Engagement on Total War.
Today, we are joined by some of our development team to give you the very first glimpse into what Total War Warhammer 40,000 will bring.
Exactly. You've seen the trailer by now, and today we're going to be here giving you the broad strokes of what you can expect from our next title. So before we begin, let's get some introductions out of the way. Dave, care to kick us off?
Hello, I'm Dave Petrie. I'm the product owner for Battles on Total War, and I'm going to try and spend this interview not hogging all the time talking about orcs.
Hi, I'm Ian Roxburgh. I'm the Principal Creative Director.
Hi, I'm Simon Mann. I'm a lead designer, primarily focused on the campaign gameplay.
So this game has been something our fans have been waiting for a long time. So how does it feel to finally reveal it?
Oh, it's been brilliant. We've been working on the game for such a while. To finally be able to come out and talk about it with our fans is really great. There's so much enthusiasm for this setting within the team. You just walk around the office and everyone's painting minis and creating armies and playing the game.
And while this is a small note, that's a really good thing to hear. If they're actively playing the tabletop game, that means at least that the passion is there. Because, I mean, sitting down and dedicating the time to play a tabletop game, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's one of the tabletop games, it means you've got the passion and you're enjoying it. So if that blends into the gameplay, that's going to be perfect.
And it's such a great atmosphere, so much excitement and passion for this setting. It's really nice to be able to actually talk about it openly for the first time.
So when you sat down with that massive list of every possible future Total War title, what was it that encouraged you to settle on Total War Warhammer 40,000 as our next adventure?
Well, a number of things, really. I mean, first of all, this setting is just made for a Total War game. And having done the fantasy trilogy with Games Workshop, we've formed a really good relationship with them over the years. And just that passion and the idea that we wanted to bring Total War to the stars, everything just aligned, and it's pretty much a no-brainer. This is just the perfect project to do next. So, yeah, and we're really excited about it.
The setting is unlike anything we did before and explored before. So what was the vision that was guiding your design approach?
Right at the very top level, there is no peace amongst the stars, and that's the guiding principle for everything we do. There's only war in this game. It's like there's the scars of previous wars for thousands of years. There's ongoing war wherever you go. It's all around you, and you'll leave scars of the wars you're engaged in for future generations. So it's all about that. But it's also about how you engage with the game and how your faction, the choices you make, the decisions you make, even the kind of units you fight and how they fight. You can design them. There's a level of customization in the game where you can define the way you fight your war, the way you choose to.
All right, so I'll pause here. Does that mean one of these Stompas could have a chainsaw in each hand? Or a flamethrower in each hand? Customization for the army sounds very interesting. We'll see what exactly they mean by that. But so, for example, I'll pull in, because it's the only kind of fantasy, I guess, sci-fi strategy game I can pull from. But Planetfall lets you change up how the units work just through your different research trees. And so that like units that may initially start by shooting kind of like acid guns or acid rounds can switch up to having maybe explosive shrapnel rounds that also are going to be acidic, that kind of stuff. So I can't wait to see kind of what that actually means.
And the way you define your stories and how that internal narrative develops throughout your experience with the game.
Well, you've just touched on them there, but the factions. So this is a setting with a massive, rich, diverse cast of factions and characters and settings. How did you go about settling on Space Marines, Astra Militarum, Orcs, and Eldari as our starting races?
So I think one thing we wanted to do was seize the opportunity to make some really cool asymmetric factions. I think the Warhammer 40,000, certainly the tabletop and the universe itself, offer us a lot of opportunities to bring asymmetry between these factions. They're all very different, right? If you look around this room and all the different kind of 4 factions you see around you, they're all going to play and feel very different to one another. That obviously meant we couldn't do all of them at once, right? We had to pick just a limited number because we really wanted to put the effort in to make each one very special.
And also because the original Warhammer Total War had 4 factions plus 1 free LC. Let me know, though, what do you all think is going to be, if they are making a free LC faction, what do you think it's going to be? Do you think it's going to be the Chaos Space Marines, or what are you thinking? Let me know.
So I just start with the Space Marines. For us, we think they're kind of one of the most important factions for our telling of the Warhammer 40,000.
Yes, they are the original army for the Imperium of Men. There is no, at least there was no Astra Militarum for a while, so you've got your Space Marines, and before them you got your Thunder Warriors, so they are core.
Universe. They are this elite troops. They are the kind of scions of the Emperor. Their goal is to defend humanity, protect it from threats both within and without. But they're very limited, right? There's not lots of them. So when you're playing as them, you're not fielding tens of thousands of troops, right? You're fielding maybe kind of 100.
Oh, I realize they're giving us troop from the actual
concept
art from in-game. Hang on.
For us,
obviously, we've
kind of
seen this, which is incredible looking. Like, this is likely one of the loading screens for the Space Marines.
Of the Warhammer 40,000
likely their loading
universe.
Screen.
They are this elite.
There we go. We've seen the Ultra Smurfs before, but this is
they are the kind of scions of the Emperor.
We had
tens
this
of thousands,
lad here, Captain
tens of thousands of troops. Right?
Captain and Gravis armor. So we're thinking captains are going to be a Lord type or a hero type? Yes, tournaments. We've got the awesome. Yeah, this is going to be so much fun. Boltstorm Gauntlet.
Right, you're fielding.
Oh, what's it? Hang on, that's a reuse approved. Hang on, we'll get
fielding
aggressor base. So a variant of them then.
Tens of thousands of troops, right? You're fielding maybe kind of 100, 200 troops, but each one of those is worth 100 of any enemy. So they're really fun to play, and you're not controlling lots of units. So there's this kind of gameplay that feeds into that. We also really wanted to bring a faction that feels very Total War. We decided to go with the Astra Militarum because they are billions of men and women. Once again, they're all kind of part of the Imperium of Man. They're trying to defend humanity.
I'll pause now. I can almost guarantee with different skills and buffs or research or whatever we have access to actually making the Laz rifle squad stronger, I'm betting this is going to be one of the scariest factions easily. You think all the Space Marines, Ultra Smurfs are going to be very strong, but I bet you the Militarum is going to just have the concentration of fire to make you sad.
From the Xenos threats.
Oh, look at them. They look incredible. Has he got a sword? Or something going on here.
But there are lots of them, right? Like, they are massed forces, regiments, there is artillery, there.
Yes, you've got the Rogel Dorn. Look at this tank. Of course you gotta have your Cadia on there. Cadia fell, guys. An optional spotlight can be placed here. Yeah, of course it can. Oppressor cannon and coaxial autocannon. So it's got the it's gonna be covered in all these different guns. This is going to melt computers. I can't wait.
There is front lines. It's something you'd see as a very military faction, right? Even down to their...
You got your second frontal weapon, the alternative weapons here.
Industrial.
I know they're saying things in the background, but I'm trying to read as much as I can. Heavy stubber. That sounds like a slur. We've got twin battle cannons. The pulverizer cannon.
complex where they're
Oh, we
building
couldn't see what the
industry
fourth
on
one was.
planets and developing them in order to kind of fuel the machine and fund the development of more like tanks and infantry. So they kind of come in as a really nice kind of contrast to that, and a faction that I think a lot of more traditional Total War players will really vibe with, because it's got a lot of that kind of heraldry to it, as it were. I think the next faction that we chose to do was the Orcs. The Orcs are a really big part of the universe, but they're the enemy, right? We needed someone for the kind of Imperium to be battling against. And the Orcs, they are massed green tide of kind of...
Here's our first look at the Orcs. Someone needs to be the enemy. They don't have demons or Tyranids. There's not myriad foes. The Orcs are still about perfect first choice.
chaos and energy.
Although they're going to probably play, it's like a melee version of the Militarum, where it's mass units that are not going to care about losses. It's going to be throw dudes at you till they get to your lines, and then once they're at your lines, you're going to have a bad day. Unless you're playing as the Space Marines, because then you're just going to pulverize the Orcs.
That's charging across a battlefield armed with...
You got your shooter combi. It's just covered in a bunch of ramshackle rockets. Because, of course, you get your gear chainsaw on the bottom.
metal sticks and
I
axes.
can imagine they're going to be incredible in melee, similar to your current Orcs. I'm trying to see what all they have here.
And
They've got the Power Claw, and then this looks like a
whatever
scimitar.
they can jerry
Yeah, why not a Power Scimitar?
rig together. Rocket launchers on sticks.
Ooh, a mount. I would assume these are mounts, although this is like a, what are these called? Ooh, it's slipping my mind. It's a slightly larger mech. It may just be called an Orc mech, honestly. Yeah, this could be either a mount option or even just as a unit. It'd be awesome.
But also like vehicles, right, which they've repurposed from Imperial scrap. Right, they're literally deconstructing the Imperium to build their own kind of war machines, as it were. And they offer this kind of beautiful energy to the more kind of military regimented side that you get with the Imperium. Lastly, we chose to do the Eldari. We really wanted to kind of push the boat out a little bit and sort of really push what it means to be a faction within.
Well, if the Eldari are here, I want to play as the Bone Reapers. Or just the guys with the two-handed rocket launchers. That's the Eldari for me.
In a Total War game, right? Like, they play totally differently to anything I think we've ever done in the past, right? I don't think we've done anything quite like this. They aren't a faction which is built for kind of massed combat, right? Like, it's not big armies fighting.
That's the Banshees, is it not? Yeah, they're going to be moving around really, really quickly. If they get pinned down at all, they're going to get cut to ribbons. But if they can stay moving, likely you're going to have a bad day. So this is going to be your Wood Elf faction, where they're going to be kiting you, and you're going to be miserable.
Fighting one another. Every loss to the Eldari doesn't get returned, right? Their souls are being taken away by the Chaos Gods. Like, they are literally kind of fighting to death to try and protect the universe and the galaxy itself. So you're not...
In my lore, guys, what is this? So I believe these are Howling Banshees, and if I'm wrong at any point in this, happily correct me aggressively. But I'm pretty sure these are Howling
doesn't
Banshees.
get returned, right? Their
What
souls
is
are being taken away by...
What is this in terms of the aspects? Is this also one of the Howling Banshees, or is this another one of the aspects? Let me know.
The Chaos Gods. Like,
Looks great,
they
though.
are literally kind of fighting to death to try and protect the universe and the galaxy itself. So you're not fighting, once again, as I say, in this kind of frontline style aspects. You're using the webways, and you're using your kind of stealth and your advanced technology, right, which none of the other factions have available to them, to actually kind of achieve your goals, right?
So maybe they're going to be more like Nagaroth, playing as Elithanar the entire time. You got Shadow Warriors. Still, people are going to suffer, but it's slightly different than the Wood Elves, I guess.
And your goals aren't always just conquest, right? Your goals may actually be just kind of, don't allow this awful thing to happen. Stop this calamity that could be occurring to the galaxy. Like, everyone else is still trying to kill you while you're trying to do that, but you know what your mission is and what you need to achieve. And
That was some deep thought here in the center here. Not sure if he's making sure there's nothing being said that shouldn't be, or he's deep in thought.
I think
We'll get back to where we were at.
they're not like a traditional Total War faction in a lot of ways. They are a very limited force. So it's going to be a really fun gameplay style. If you are these kind of superhuman troops, but I guess your kind of weakness is you're limited in number, right? Like, you can take on any foe on those battlefields, but you've also got to make sure you're kind of measuring your losses, right? Because you're not building infrastructure, right? You're not kind of able to build new constructions in the same way as maybe the other faction.
And they're giving us small hints as to campaign mechanics, so the Eldar aren't going to be necessarily worried about conquest. They're going to be far more worried about different events happening on the galactic scale, and either stopping bad ones or ensuring different events happen as they think they should, which is pretty cool. In fact, that seems like something they should have probably had for the Lizardmen's design philosophy for Warhammer Fantasy, where they're not necessarily concerned with building past Lustria. It's making sure certain events happen in the world or don't happen, which is really cool. Or the Space Marines, for example, they're basically saying they don't build up constructions or infrastructure as quickly. They're probably going to be almost purely a military-based order, as they are, and so you'll be limited in your replenishment and things like that, which it sounds kind of like you're playing as the dwarves, I guess, where you've got really low, or I guess lower count units, but they're obviously basically heroes in their own right each. Their weakness being overwhelmed by either overwhelming firepower or, I guess, just overwhelming melee, so it'll be fun.
So you are really reliant on these troops that you've brought in to fight the battle, but it's also really fun to fight the battle as them.
And what about Astra Militarum? They are quite different.
They are. They're a lot more of a traditional, I like to call it a total war faction, massed ranks of...
They've got their artillery batteries. Yeah, so you get good buffs on these artillery batteries and the tanks, and I can't wait. I'm already setting up builds, and I don't even know how these things are going to play their stats yet.
Infantry lines and artillery. If you want that more total war experience when you play this game, I'd pick up the Astra Militarum. They're definitely hitting that right on their head.
How is it that they're emulating that traditional Total War experience?
Well, as I said, it's more about building up resources, supply, building infrastructure to recruit an army in what you would expect most Total War games to have as a core. With some of the other factions, we're moving away from that and trying very asymmetrical ideas that you progress through the game in slightly different ways. Whereas
So the Militarum is going to be more your generic Total War faction. If you've played other games, you're trying to get into this one, and you maybe just be really interested in 40k, and you're wanting to learn the game. It sounds like the Militarum is where you begin, and likely if there is a tutorial, it'll be playing as the Militarum. Although tutorials are always at the Space Marines. What am I talking? What am I even saying?
with the Astra Militarum, they are the humans throughout the galaxy. So, it's more grounded in what we would say Total War has been as a staple for so many years. So, to me, that's my meat and drink.
And what about Eldari and Orcs?
The Eldari have been really interesting for us, right? Like, as I said, I think sometimes a faction comes along and they're so unique that you kind of have to do them justice, right? Like, they are a dying race due to a kind of major cataclysm that has occurred to them many kind of eons ago. So they are kind of trying to prevent these cataclysms occurring, kind of more tragedy that could befall kind of humanity or any other race in the galaxy. They're not a faction that will fight toe-to-toe. You're utilizing your webway gates as
Was this one that's like an avatar of Cain?
kind of humanity or any
Different
other race in
aspects?
the galaxy. They're
Yeah, it
not
looks like
a
Cain to
faction
me.
that will fight toe-to-toe. You're utilizing your
Sweet.
webway gates as a kind of traversal mechanism to move quickly from place to place, including moving to your craft world, a kind of off-map setup piece, which is actually where you're recruiting all your units. And you're setting up your various shrines, which allow you to access
So we'll have craft worlds and shrines. So there'll be much more. I'm guessing. I guess your horde factions, except for they're a horde that takes their city with them and then builds up shrines all over the place. I'll continue to let them talk.
your more elite troops going through. So there's this really interesting gameplay here that, once again, a bit like the Space Marines, you're quite limited in number. Your troops are not a kind of infinite resource that you can use. You're actually kind of having to, once again, use them carefully because they're all a glass cannon. Every soul lost is a soul not returned, right? So you have to really pick your fights and kind of challenge your enemies.
And then there are orcs. And then there are orcs.
Go on, Dave, do it.
They're much less about that sort of like weird, sneaky stuff like hiding.
This man said, all right, Jake, do it. He's been waiting to unleash his bit on the orcs. Let's do this.
They're much more upfront about building up a huge mass of boys and basically smashing through the solar system, through the galaxy in a big, terrible war, right? When that comes to the campaign, there are actually some sort of parallels with the Astra Militarum, for example, in that there are loads of them. They are building up resources, but they are much, much more about building up momentum and continuing to fight and continuing to crump. It's crumping with the lads, you know, it's continuing to fight and continuing to push forwards a front line and making sure that the boys don't get bored and start fighting each other, right? It's about taking him and his lads and basically smashing along and keeping that momentum up and making sure you've always got something interesting to sink a chopper into.
Dave likes the orcs.
I love orcs.
Wouldn't be able to tell.
You've grown the scale for what we're fighting for from provinces to planets. How are you going to capture both the small details of planetary warfare and obviously the wider conflict?
So it kind of starts with you're fighting on a planet. Right? You're fighting in a battle, a kind of real-time experience. You've got thousands of troops kind of charging across the surface of a hive world, right? Kind of fighting in the streets of a hive city, firing powerful bombardments kind of at one another, either from orbit or from off field, right? And you're kind of fighting to...
Either from in orbit or off field. So those are just the different army abilities. But you have, they're basically what he's saying there, your different ships, even the orcs had space stations. You saw their little ramshackle one there a couple of slides back. So the different space stations, as you upgrade them, will be able to probably provide different support abilities similar to your Black Arcs and things, which sounds awesome, but obviously much more in-depth and more going on than just the Black Arcs do.
To take that hive city, maybe back for the Imperium in some manner. Zooming out a bit further than that, that was a battle on a planet, right? So once you complete that battle, you're now on the planet. You captured the region. Well done, the hive city, it's now yours. Because you've taken that hive city, you now have access to further resources and large populations of it, like billions of people are living in these hive cities. That affects your kind of campaign across that planet, right? Because you've captured that hive city, you've now got a staging point to advance across the other regions of the planet, each of which themselves would be a different kind of battle type. Kind of zooming up further to that, you then have your kind of fleets around the planet, right? Like your fleets are able to drop forces to where they need to be into kind of certain key regions. They're able to support...
Hang on, that said fighter base. Hang on now. I realize I'm a little delayed there, but fighter ship launch bays. You think we're getting ship combat? Well, granted, I would feel like you have got to have some form of it, but it's been so long since naval warfare that I don't know, I don't expect it anymore, but man, ship combat.
Drop forces to where they need to be into kind of certain key regions. They're able to support with, as I say, off-map bombardments, both in campaign and in battle. But then they're also able to kind of just ferry your troops. They are transport as well as that. And obviously, that's because you're not fighting on one planet. You're fighting on many planets as you go.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. We got your frontier worlds, your agri worlds, your fortress worlds, mining, industrial hive. So yeah, going to be having different regions. You can see these are the different actual settlements on them. They're the little, at least in the agri world, you can see them. The construction ring around that is so cool looking.
You're traveling your forces kind of to many different front lines, many different battlefields, trying to take control of this overall planetary system. So your fleets are kind of your key motivator for that. And obviously, it's not just traveling planet to planet, right? Like there are anomalies, there are things to do in the space between as well. So there's a strategy layer that you're kind of having to interact with. We didn't stop there. Like, even better than that, like we are now offering you kind of a further context, right? Like, much like campaigns give a context to your battle, right? Capturing that hive city changed the way that you play. We are now saying that actually your campaign matters. The result of this campaign will change the kind of future of the galaxy itself, because we've moved up to this other layer where you're fighting in what we call a crusade theater, which is a kind of area of the galaxy which is seen as a kind of hot point for conflict with factions fighting one another. And in these key areas, you are fighting in systems. You're also sometimes just fighting pivotal battles as well. And that's the idea behind it, is you now have a context for it. It's not just a campaign and it's a one and done thing and you had great fun and it's over. It's a campaign, you had great fun, look what it's done to your next steps. What campaigns trigger from that? What battles come from it? How do you advance your faction after that? So when you go into the next campaign, maybe you are more prepared or even more powerful than you were previously.
So
So layered camp, these planets have to be huge then from how he's talking.
scars of your campaigns and your battles, they're all going to be shown on that Crusade Theatre level. But what's the worst thing you could do to a planet?
You can destroy planets entirely. So
pretty bad.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Unlike previous games as well, we obviously have let you raise cities, but there was always an opportunity to rebuild. But in the world of kind of Total War Warhammer 40,000, we are actually letting you just blow up and destroy a planet. It is a permanent action. There's no backseas, there's no takebacks. But also remember, it's not something that can be done frivolously, right? Like blowing up a planet by the Imperium is something requiring multiple layers of authorization. They would much rather throw away 1 billion human souls to reclaim a world than destroy it. However,
Depending on which Inquisitor you are, some Inquisitors are very trigger happy with Exterminatus.
there are extreme circumstances, and we do let you push the button.
Fantastic. Well, assuming we have anywhere to fight, I have a very big question for you. There's been a lot of speculation about it. You know, it's such an integral part of Total War, and fans have gone back and forth on how we'd do it, how we wouldn't do it. Battles. How did you approach designing battles in Total War Warhammer 40,000?
That is, oh, there we go. That is a massive question, and I think with anything of this scale, like the first thing that you do is you go to the source material, right? You go straight into the codexes, and you go into the tabletop, and you play it, and you really feel it, and you get to know all of the factions, all the potential factions, and the different combinations of things that can happen. You look at all the toys and the fun stuff that you can do there, and then you start to think, well, how can we sort of transpose that to Total War, right? And obviously scale is a big thing for us. So we thought, well, we need to make sure we have ways to bring in all sorts of stuff, make sure that you can, keep to sort of supplying the battlefield with your powerful units. So something that came as a real sort of natural occurrence was we have to have reinforcement play a really big part in what battles are. Again, not only for the scale, but also to create that sort of intrinsic link between the campaign. So now when we're playing, for example, Space Marines, who you've got sat on your fleet really, really matters, right? Because those are the people that are going to be able to come in via drop pod. They're going to be able to slam into the battlefield. We're going to talk about destruction. They can knock down buildings, right? They can destroy elements of the battlefield, change the battlefield, and they can start killing things where you need them to be, right? So the Space Marines can become all about that sort of like, Swiss Army knife approach to battle, right?
And this is a fundamental part of the tabletop game.
Absolutely.
With all the factions, it's those reinforcements are a key part of that flavour, and it has to be therefore part of the Total War experience of it.
Absolutely. So when you've got your units that you have specific roles for, they can sometimes now.
Yeah, so we need to just drop in a Baneblade tank right on top of where it needs to be.
Show up where you need them to if you sort of sequester them away in the right places, and we have different methods for each faction. Some are much more traditional. The Guard have less ways of interjecting directly into the battlefield. They might have to throw wave after wave of their own men up the battlefield in order to arrive in time to make sure that they get there before the last unit that is probably now flagging might be running away, so to replace them in time to keep them hold that line. You have the Orcs in a similar fashion. They do have some incredible teleportation technology. You wouldn't believe it, but they do. So they can really zap things into the battlefield and do some pretty wild things there too.
One of their favorite tactics is just to teleport squigs or different things right into Astra Militarum personnel. That way, oh look, there's now a squig in your chest. That's exciting.
And then, of course, you have the Eldari with their webway gates and things like that. So the ability to sort of pop up in unexpected places. All of these methods allow you to bring your toys to the table where you need them, right? And that was a really, really big part of making sure we captured this and sort of evolved the gameplay. I think a lot of people look at this setting and they kind of go, wow, that's really futuristic. And they're right, it feels very futuristic. But a core realization that we had was that it's not a realization we only had, this is it. It is science fantasy, right? So there is so much fantasy wrapped into it. And when you think about the conflicts that go on, yes, there is cover. Yes, there's a lot of ranged combat going on, but there's also like loads of punching, like so much punching, like loads and loads of crumping that goes on. Like you really have a lot of melee going on in these battles. There are lots of forces will sort of mass up and crash into one another. Practically every unit has some sort of combination of a thing that they can shoot you with and a thing that they can punch you with, right? Like in some cases, literally power fists, right? So there are like so many sort of very sort of familiar elements actually to it when you start to see and realize that there's a lot of sort of like fantasy drives in there, and so those massed armies still happen. There will be massive front lines crashing against one another. So yeah, there's loads of gutsy
it's really
stuff.
like the reinforcement mechanics, the way you fight, even within a faction. It's so much more connected to that campaign experience and how you've teed up that particular setup for the battle, and that's key. And it's fundamental to the core design as well. But also going back to, understanding that setting and the Warhammer 40,000 universe to that degree, it really brings out that in the game itself as well. So having a team that's just so ingrained in this for so many years, like Dave, and it really helps bring out those detail that it makes it authentic, and that's just such a fundamental Total War franchise pillar is authenticity, and you can just see it coming out in this game in all the details as well as the bigger picture. So I think that's key to what we need to do to bring that out in the game.
And again, on that connection level, we really want to make sure that we capture, again, the scale of these conflicts. So when we're fighting these battles, they're not just like one battle happening in an isolated pocket. You are the flashpoint. You are the most important force fighting in the most important place that will decide the event on effectively that continent, right? But there is war everywhere, all across the planet's surface, right? So you really are that flashpoint. When you show up to battles, you often will have a purpose. There are things that you are trying to achieve. It might be like, securing an orbital cannon, for example, to stop people from using it. But also you'll be joining and fighting against forces that are already present on the battlefield. It is not uncommon that you'll rock up as Space Marines and find that there are a bunch of Astra Militarum about to be overwhelmed by a bunch of sneaky Eldari. Or it might be that you show up as Orcs and find that there's loads of really great Astra Militarum to beat the hell out of, right? So it's that kind of level of trying to, again, capture that scale, make sure we really are doing justice to this sheer volume of stuff and different units that are going to show up in this game.
So we've spoken a lot about Total War Warhammer 40,000, but what is it that really the Total War's bringing here? What is it that our game is doing differently to other games in the 40,000 universe?
Well, okay, I think the main thing here for us is scale. It's a fundamental Total War franchise pillar, for starters, but we've taken it so much further with this game. I mean, you literally hear the stuff Dave's talking about. You've got units and single entities on a battlefield, down there on the ground, and right from there, and the scale of the battles up to the scale of a region of a planet, to multiple planets in a system, to multiple systems across an entire galaxy. And that's huge even for Total War scale. And it's like we are over the next years going to develop this out, and all the content and everything that fills up that galaxy. But the gameplay and the decisions you make and the way you interact with the game is literally right from down there all the way across the galaxy.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and I think the kind of personalization of your kind of faction, its units, its style, it's even down to its mechanics, right? You're creating your faction, right? You're making something unique and personal to you, obviously attached to, hopefully, but I think that adds so much to us. Like, I haven't seen anyone else really kind of going to quite the depths that we do. Like, you can have different pattern types, you can have kind of different left and right color, you can set your pauldron, or like kind of your knee. Sorry, pauldron's up there. You can set your kneecap to a different color. You can have different decals around your faction. If you want to be a kind of like a, kind of an Ultramarines fanboy and have kind of like the sigil of Ultramar everywhere, you can do that. It's really fun, and we've generally found anyone who's playing it spends a lot of time on that bit, right? Because you really want to make your own faction and feel that. And it honestly is great. It really, really takes me back a long way.
Finally, of everything we spoke about today, what are you the most excited about for our players to experience?
I think for me it is the customization. I know I've literally just mentioned it, but it keeps coming back as this thing, right? Like everything comes back to this fact that I think for the first time I've made my faction, right? Like, they're uniquely mine. No one else will have a faction anything like mine, right? Okay, yeah, there'll still be Space Marines, but they're my chapter, right? Like, this is my Force Commander who I've kind of personalized. Like, I'm controlling all that. If I want to have a Space Marine faction that's more about kind of fire mechanics, like I want flamethrowers and melters everywhere, I can make that. I can make a faction that's leaning into that. And that is my kind of way of playing, right? Because I love fire. Fire is great. Normally. But that's the thing, is we're kind of letting you make your own kind of gameplay, essentially, right? Like, here are the problems, here are the challenges that the universe is throwing at you by battles and campaigns and flashpoints, but how do you solve that? How do you build the kind of ultimate faction to kind of deal with any problem that could be thrown at you? I think it's going to give so many kind of hours, maybe even years, hopefully, of like entertainment, of just making cool factions, hopefully sharing it with your friends and stuff like that as well, right? Like, and always comparing your kind of faction designs with one another. I'm really excited by that.
Well, all of that as well. But for me as well, it's something that's very different now with Total War, the Crusade Theatre concept, where, we know how long a campaign can go on, how engaged you can be for hundreds of hours. I've done it myself for years, right? And then you go, great, that was a campaign. I invested so much time and effort. Now I'll start. It's very replayable. I'll start another one as a different faction. Great. But now you play that campaign, and that's another part of that jigsaw of your own
So there's no way from what he said a couple times here, and I'm hoping they're not just exaggerating. It sounds like each of these planets is almost going to be its own Total War map. Which sound like they're talking about scale. That sounds unbelievable. If they can pull that off, that will be... I don't know. I can't think of a strategy game that can be better than this. It's gonna take a long time to surpass something like that, where each of these different planets is its own campaign. Obviously, it's not gonna be like a full Immortal Empire style. I mean, I would imagine not, but like a little smaller mini campaign. But still, the way they keep talking about it, that sounds nuts. Also, the customization, being able to, like, if you wanted to build the salamanders, there you go. You want to build your own version of them, fantastic. You want to make the Ultramarines, but if they're not, you don't like the Ultra Smurfs, the way they use their weapons, you can set up Ultra Smurfs that have they had entirely different weapon design from what it sounds like. So, or at least they're going to specialize in different weapons depending on what you have access to. But let's continue and hear what else they've got to say.
Own internal narrative feeding onto a higher layer that moves gradually across the whole sector and then the whole galaxy. To me, it's that whole campaign experience just being a part of your journey, not the whole journey. And to me, that's so fundamentally new, and it just means it's just such a long-term experience beyond even our massive long campaigns for previous years. So that's the bit for me that stands out, I think. Dave?
It's kind
Orcs,
of
maybe?
It's the Orcs!
probably something to do with the orcs.
Maybe.
Maybe something to do with explosions.
Probably.
I think it's sort of like a litany of firsts, right? It's like, again, talking about the Lance Strike. It's the first time that you drag a Lance Strike across the battlefield, and the second time, and the third time when you use it to obliterate buildings, to drag across units. That sort of satisfaction is so super tangible. It's the first time you shoot a tank, right, and you see it veer off and hit a building, and again cause a bit more destruction, cause a bit more chaos.
Yeah, that's really cool. The destruction they've worked in with this new engine, where you even like the drop pods coming in, old knockout buildings, and have that rubble supposedly come on down, and if it lands on units, probably kill those units. Having the destruction be part of the battles more is amazing. It's been in since the very beginning. They've had kind of little destructive bits of buildings, but having it actually impact the battle and being so every single time you're shooting a tank shot, so imagine you're firing steam tank cannonballs. And those, everything, maybe it misses and bounces off the ground. It takes out a chunk of the wall or a building behind it. That would be so cool.
It's the first time that you use like a Psyker's ability, right, and sort of blast apart an opponent, or see orcs teleporting in from somewhere unexpected. A weird boy going pew and jumping a bunch of boys right up in your face, or vice versa, right? And there's all those moments are in there, and I think there's so much love and care for the source material in there, and I think there's a lot of little bits that people find and kind of go, wow, this is there's some good stuff here.
And that concludes Total War Warhammer 40,000 Developer Roundtable. Big thank you to our developers, our guests today. And then we're going to be back later in 2026, and we will bring you more content. We're going to bring you battles, we're going to bring you campaign. And that's not all. We're going to go into deep dives, we're going to do blogs, videos, and all sorts of Q&As. So we will see you there.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for tuning in, and another massive thank you from everyone here at the Total War Warhammer 40,000 team. We'll see you next time.
That's just the battle thing again. So yeah, no, thank you all so much for dropping on by this little Game Vision Developer Roundtable. Again, minus the table. They definitely need to maybe invest in a table for your roundtables. It'll look a lot better. Either way, you guys did a fantastic job. This was great to see. Great to see all of the I guess the vision itself and what the developers are excited about. Because when the developers are actually excited and they're tangibly excited about the content that's coming in, that means they're actually working on something they're enjoying. Which, hey, that tends to equal very good content, and we can only hope. So they mentioned there's going to be a couple years out. They've been working on it for a while, which is good to hear. But it's a couple years out. My favorite thing that they kind of mentioned here today is honestly the customization and the idea that our campaigns on each planet are going to, obviously, because if you conquer a planet, that's going to give you a ton of resources to use towards the next campaign. But the fact that these little smaller mini campaigns are going to basically each add up to your galactic empire is so cool sounding. Am I going to play mostly the Ultra Smurfs? Probably. Yes, probably I'm going to make a We're going to be making the size the Emperor almost immediately. But let me know in the comments what you are going to be crafting up. Which of the new factions is your favorite, sounding from what they've kind of developed here, talked about here, and what is factions you want to see coming on in first with DLC. Love to hear from you. Thanks for stopping on by. If you enjoyed, please do leave a like for like God and a sub with the sub zone, and I'll see you all in the next one.